Allison, thank you for coming on here today.
Thank you, Gary. Thanks for having me.
Of course. Well, yeah, getting this thing started, would you be able to give us a little bit about who you are, what you do, and what your YouTube channel is all about?
Yeah. Um, my name is Allison Holley, and what I do is offer channelings, channeled guidance, to everyone who is on this awakening path who resonates with it. Um, and I'm really here for the collective to offer collective messages. And I also do personal readings. Um, My YouTube channel, I have a live stream every single week where on Sundays where I share a message for the collective, a channeled message, and also connect with community there. And just in general, I feel compelled and honored to be a messenger for information that will help people through their awakening process. Because we're one, we're a collective, and often my channeling helps me, well, always, because it's a frequency that I'm tuning into more so than the information.
Mm,
And so being able to tune into that frequency helps me constantly. And then the information is also it's helpful.
mm. Awesome.
Yeah.
Cool. So, if you are a messenger, what is the message? Is it that we are a collective? Are you trying to spread the good word about that?
Yeah. What I find comes through consistently is, I would say, two to three messages, and they're all the same, put in different ways. Presence, love, and play,
Mm,
expression, joy. Um, and people can ask every question, and it comes down to one of those answers. And then, of course, there's so many avenues that we can go down from that. I'm always just listening. So I like to be surprised by what I channel. I love those moments where I'm tuning into the frequencies and channeling information, and something comes through that I'm just like, wow, that was so cool, you
mm,
know?
mm-hmm,
But really, channeling is just presence, and presence, the deepest levels of presence, is where we experience divine love. So love on that higher frequency. We're always swimming in it, but we can't really recognize it because we're in these realms of separation. And then play, because play is light energy as it's dancing through our physical experience and our life experience. And it really is a dance. It really is this beautiful harmonic expression that comes through each of us individually. So
mm,
yeah, those tend to be the main messages. I mean, I could get more specific. The messages that are coming through right now, they're covering those topics, but also for the collective, messages coming through about starships coming to the planet. Star family contact, ET contact, whatever we want to call it, and also major shifting and how to energetically be prepared for that. Dragons and dragon frequencies have been coming through a lot. So those are kind of and messages around time, and learning how time shifts, our perspective of time shifts as we go through different awakening and ascension processes. So those are kind of more what's coming through recently. But yeah, the answer is basically always presence, and it could almost be a joke at this point. It's
mm.
like any question, the answer is presence, love,
Uh-huh.
and those are the same thing.
Yeah. Wow. Yeah. You gave me a lot to work with there on where we can take this.
Well, let's play with it.
Yeah,
Let's be present
exactly.
with it.
Hmm. I feel like it almost the triad that you just gave us is almost sequential. Like presence. And in that presence is love, and what comes from that love is play.
Ah, I love
Do you
that.
feel that?
Well, when you said it, yes,
Yeah,
definitely. And I feel often that it goes in that sequence within us um, because we sort of self-condition away from our natural state, which is love and which is this sort of spontaneous movement, ecstatic play of energy, because that's what we are at our basic um, selves. But in order to be able to access that again, we need to be present because that helps us gently let the conditioning sort of fall away and recognize what's always available in the present moment. So, yeah,
always.
accessing it through presence, that does seem to be the first step.
Yeah, definitely. Just gotta slow down, be still, and know. Yeah, it's that simple. I think that's what all my conversations revolve around is meditation, essentially.
Mm,
Just being still, just stepping back and saying, all right, hold on. And then noticing a lot,
mm,
noticing the moment, noticing your awareness, noticing really what's going on past the stories
mm,
of so many different narratives that we were conditioned into.
mm.
Simple presence. It's we've all heard it before,
It's
but it really
so,
is the truth.
I mean, it's the oldest teaching in any book.
Yeah.
It really is. It really is. And it can seem, it is kind of funny to keep repeating it because it can seem like, oh, we want to just breeze over that for the bigger teachings. Like, well, what do I do, to contact my star family or to have starships visit me, or what do I do to ascend? Like, what is it that I
Mm,
need to do?
hmm
And it really is that simple. And it's a continuous process because in that presence, in present moment, like presence is channeling. That's all I'm doing when I'm going into channeling. I'm becoming very present and witnessing and listening to the present moment. There's a current that flows through everything. Because we're in the realms of separation, we get to experience time because we not everything is now. We get to experience being other. So we get to experience individual moments of time and the separation, the illusion of separation of that. And with that comes this sort of superpower to be like an accordion where we can be human and distracted and then we can bring it all into this one present moment and experience that. And then we can go back into that sort of movement of the human experience. So, but it really is the ticket to everything.
Yeah.
It's the gateway for everything.
Expansion and contraction.
Mm,
Yep.
mm,
That's the essence of the Tao. It's a
mm,
constant dance of expansion and contraction.
mm,
And amidst all that is the presence. One
mm,
can expand when expansion is needed, and one can contract when contraction is needed. But it
mm.
all comes from presence. Yeah, and what you said, good point. All of this channeling process, contacting the extraterrestrials, finding some semblance of happiness, peace, or joy, all of the other spiritual stories, that comes after presence. Like that
Yeah,
all comes from presence, actually, is a better way to say it. Like
yeah,
presence is the foundation of all of the spiritual gamut that we can describe. Just simple breathing and being here now. I almost hate to say it because it is cliche. We've all heard it before, but it's like
yeah.
you have to reiterate it. At least I feel the need to reiterate it because that's the truth and that's the essence. And we can see that in my own life personally and in others, we're not present.
Mm.
That's just the fact of the matter. We don't know how to practice this state of presence. So, yeah, I mean, it's been said a million times, but now it's been said a million and one times by me.
Yeah, that's true.
Because we
It's
haven't got
true.
the message yet. Like we haven't woken up to really. It's that simple. It's just practice a sense of presence in your life, a sense of meditation, sense of stillness, and that'll lead the way in all
Mhm.
endeavors and pursuits of our life. So, yeah. Would you say, is that how you got started on this path? Is just through a meditative practice? Is this, well, I guess
Mhm.
maybe let me rephrase the question. Like, how did you get started on this path? Like, where did this all come from for you to be able to see this and know this?
Yeah. It happened spontaneously. So, and I would really like to revisit in a moment why we keep having to say presence and why it seems so elusive.
Yeah,
And
if you
maybe
want to go
even go
on that,
into,
yeah, we can get into
yeah.
that. You don't have to get into your story. It's okay.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
I'll share my story. I think it'll build context
Okay,
for all of that. But
cool.
so yeah, in 2012 I went through a very intense, very strong, undeniable spiritual awakening process that included spontaneous visions, spontaneous channeling, and I say spontaneous because it wasn't anything that I intentionally went into. It was like hopping on the back of a flying dragon and going, whoa, 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 you know. It was all just happening. It was, you know, aligning to this sort of internal clock that we all have, this divine timing, as we might call it, or divine template.
Mm.
And so, yeah, it blew open for me. What precipitated that was I lost my voice for 6 months. So it
Oh.
was going in and out. It was significant enough to get my attention, right? 6 months. I was like, okay, fine, I'll maybe look at something different here. And went to a holistic practitioner, also threw my neck out, also had several other things going on. And she prompted me to say, you know, this is a metaphysical experience, so it's related. It's in your throat chakra, is what we're going to look at. You know, maybe you're not speaking your truth. That really started the whole process of unraveling. And it wasn't direct, it wasn't linear. It wasn't like, oh, now that I'm speaking my truth, everything opens. It was, I spoke my truth. I thought my truth was one thing, and it ended up being something completely different. But I had to kind of take that first little piece out of the wall, so to speak.
Hmm.
And once I did, you know, I ended a relationship, and that's really what catapulted me into um, these powerful experiences. And it just all cracked open. For me, it was like living on a psychedelic journey for several months. Um, it was really powerful. This level of reality was not real, and it was very apparent. You know, there were times where it felt like I remember one moment where it felt like, oh, the walls aren't real, and if I just go like this, they're gone. And this is while I was completely sober. I was not on psychedelics. I was very sober, just breathing through my life. How this relates to what we were talking about with that presence is it was a vibrational shift that really brought me into such deep levels of presence. I think when we're in a certain vibrational tone or layer of the multi-layer cake that we sort of inhabit as humans, we exist on multiple layers. Our consciousness exists predominantly on the human layer, which is more the physical or the psychic. And what happened was everything sort of blew open. So I entered a new dimension within my consciousness. And in that dimensional layer, well, the physical reality is not very real. And I was more consciously predominantly within that layer of reality. So I was viewing things from that place. In that layer of reality, it's closer to all is now. Time is much more malleable in that layer of conscious reality. Uh, and that layer of multidimensionality is how I want to say it. And so as I went through that process, before I went through that process, meditation was absolutely agitating. It felt physically uncomfortable for me to sit down and try and meditate. To focus on my breath, I would get this sort of anxious, like my body would really seize up, and I would get this very anxious feeling. It felt like I was losing my breath. And so then when I went through this awakening process that just blew everything open, and I was sort of existing on this other frequency layer predominantly, all I wanted to do was sit down and meditate. It was the most delicious experience. I would just sit down and just listen and just be present. And it still feels so good. And the reason that it feels good is because my consciousness had shifted into a place where that is sort of a natural function of that layer of reality. So I kind of want to then like go back and dive into why is it so hard for us to be in presence?
Mm-hmm.
We have this agitation that's built into us from being in such a intense level of the density. So we exist on multiple dimensional frequency layers. And when we're in our human experience predominantly, we are experiencing that density. What's part of that density is separation. It is a feeling of being so separate that we're separate from our God nature, we're separate from each other, we're separate from ourselves, even. So it breeds this feeling of always seeking because we're seeking to close that separation because we know that there's oneness. We somehow inherently know that still. We can't forget that ever.
Mm-hmm.
So we're sort of seeking connection and to close that separation. But the hard thing is that the only way that we can see to close that when we're in that density layer is actions that tend to create more separation. So we seek it in unconscious relating. We seek it in um, ways of being that are self-harming. Even the nature of seeking is actually self-hate, disguised as reaching for something. There's nothing out there. It's all here. Um, and I it gets a little complex because it's not that it's not that I'm saying, oh, only me, myself and I is God. But when we get into these frequencies, and you know this, when we get into these frequencies, we experience being all of it. And therefore, we know ourselves to be a channel of that God nature. So, from that density layer, it's hard to sit still because we feel this sort of internal agitation that makes us want to close the gap. But the nature of that layer is that it drives us towards things that cause more separation.
Mm-hmm.
So it seems to be a little self-defeating as I describe this. But it doesn't need to be because we have help that can help us break through those layers of feeling separate to help us access that higher frequency where then presence feels so good because it's part of the nature of that frequency bandwidth and we're predominantly existing in it. Few things that help us with that are genuine connection, genuine love. So when we experience presence in another person, it awakens a remembrance within ourselves. So these moments where you and I are sitting in presence with each other and we're practiced in that presence, and all of the interviews that you do where you're just, hey, we're just going to go into this, we're just going to talk. You are assisting in accessing that level of presence within other people. Everyone who watches it gets that spark internally that says, oh, I remember this. This is my true nature. It's presence. It's connection. It's beingness. The other thing that can really help us is being in nature. So when we're in nature, nature doesn't have that layer of ego, which is really beautiful. Nature exists in more presence.
Yeah, trees don't have an ego.
Yeah, trees don't have an ego. They don't need to be named. They don't need to be, you know, In fact, they're inherently interconnected with
Yeah,
all of it, right? We're
exactly.
the ones saying that's a tree, that's a bush, and that's a bird, this is a table. We're the ones doing that. It reinforces the game that we're playing, the game of separation, which is a beautiful game. So nature will help us access the truth of who we are, the presence, the present layer of who we are.
Hmm.
Mhm.
Any other aids? You said sit with
Mm,
realized beings, nature. Anything else come
mm,
to mind?
mm. The practice of self-love, I would say we could put into that. That can get a little confusing if we're not really knowing where to start because we sort of think that can be met with a lot of resistance, actually, when we try and sit with ourselves in self-love. Um, we might think that it's a doing, I've got
Yeah.
to do these things, or we might really be resistant to it because the nature of separation is, again, it's separation even from ourselves. But if we can access small levels of self-love, which would be actually how we access it is through presence. So it's a little
Yep.
circular, but being with ourselves, sitting with ourselves. Hey, body. Hey, self, beautiful being called Allison. What do you need right now? What do you desire right now? How can I assist you with that? And building that trust with ourselves, that's going to bring us into moving through the layers of separation within, that it'll break that open and
Hmm.
assist us in being more present. We avoid ourselves even when
Yep.
we're in those unconscious layers. We really avoid ourselves. That's a scary place. It's a scary thing to be because, yeah, because mm, it's that internal agitation. You know, we know that we're God. We just know
Deep
that we're
down.
God.
Yeah.
And
We
to,
all do.
s- mhm, to sit with the
Yeah.
feeling of separation from ourselves, it's very uncomfortable because the greater truth is, no, 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 I'm God. Why am I having this experience? Why am I feeling uncomfortable within? I know that I'm bigger than this. And then, there's this sort of, mm, well, we just kind of let that go in favor of distracting ourselves because that can be painful to feel.
Mm. Powerful stuff. Yeah.
Mm,
We all know deep down, in some way, we're all enlightened. And I
mm,
think what we don't want to recognize and we run away from is the fact that we did it to ourselves, is
mm.
that we forgot on purpose.
Yeah.
But that's only half the story. It's like you forgot on purpose to realize or remember the majesty that you are God. Like that's all part of the
Mm,
game too. So I
yeah.
think that's the spiritual journey is like, this is tough. It's tough to really describe now. But the spiritual journey is realizing it's like you played a joke on yourself.
Yeah. The cosmic joke.
Yeah. Yeah. We just don't know how to laugh. We don't
Mm,
know we don't know it's a joke. We don't really know how we ended up here in the first place. But that yearning for God, that yearning to return and remember is inside all of us, like we said.
mhm,
We just have misplaced priorities and we just have like we don't want the show to end. We don't want the game to end. So we try to keep it going through external means, through materialistic means, right? Trying to find it
mhm,
here, find it there, with him, with her, find it
mhm,
in some kind of external thing.
mhm,
And that's just continuing on the joke without realizing it's a joke, you know? That's just like building more and more up to the climax until I think we reach a point of exhaustion. And then we
mhm.
get the punchline, and then it enters
Yeah.
into us. You know what I'm saying?
It does come through exhaustion often, doesn't it?
Yeah, yeah. So I think the density, the negative density, or just I don't know about negative, but the stronger densities, the lower densities are really just paving the way for us to reach the highest density of all, you know? It's like, but you have to reach the point of there's got to be another way to play this game. That's the essence.
Yes.
It's like I've been playing this game wrong the whole time.
Yeah.
And that's the essence of rebirth. I think you adequately described the rebirth process, and that's what spiritual awakening is like um you become yeah, you might go to these high highs and transcend and all is good, kumbaya, the light and love, peace, it feels great. But eventually you become reborn back into the third dimension, we could say. I'm
Mm,
still Gary, you're still Allison, the listener is still the
yes.
listener in this matrix, we could say. But there's a different flavor of living once one
Mm,
awakens, and that is rebirth. That is the resurrection. So, let me ask you this one. Do you feel like there is a different way to play your character of
um,
Allison now that you have this knowing and this realization? Is that the point of it all? Does it all allude to being reborn in a sense? But it's not like literally reborn, and maybe that's kind of esoteric, but like reborn in the way of your expression as a human being here in this density.
oh, so good, so good. And I love the way that you're processing all of this and sharing all of this. Um, mm, I feel like, yeah, I've lived 1,000 billion lifetimes in this experience. Um, every time I have an aha moment, there's a new opportunity. It shifts and opens the aperture.
Yeah.
Um, major awakenings, I've had a few major, like I would say that 2012, that was a major awakening, shifted everything. Suddenly, it could be sort of like, well, I mean, it feels like, people have used these examples. It's like turning the lights up. All of a sudden, you see brand new things. They've always been there, but it's like a different layer of life. Everything was different. I mean, everything.
Yeah.
And I've had another, not to that level, but another awakening that happened. Uh, and then it truly feels like I have awakenings just constantly. In fact, solstice, which we just kind of moved through and we're still in the energies of, solstice always creates a powerful awakening.
Mm,
It's winter solstice, for us where we are. And that winter solstice, there's such a movement into stillness and into the void that, man, this last one, I feel like a new person. Wow, I have never dropped into this level within myself before, completely surrendering to the divine, letting go of even more assumptions that I had no idea that I had. Um, it's just so powerful. So there's when it's so interesting, it's almost like removing things. It's always this process of removing things that
yeah.
opens it up to more of the fullness of all of it.
And freedom.
And yeah, and it's just, oh, it's so fascinating. It's so fascinating. I would say, I know how to play with deeper and deeper levels of surrender now, which I think we get so attached to this idea of action being how we play. I mean, this seems to be the theme of this podcast is like stillness, actually, stillness. But we think that there's a doing. We think that, okay, now I've learned this, now I've got to go out and take action and do. What I have found is that in taking a deep breath, I mean, what do they teach in like, they teach it in couples counseling, they teach it to kindergartners. If you get angry, count to 10. Don't do anything until you count to 10. Before we hit record, I literally did that. I was interacting with a friend and I had to pause. I noticed a lot come up and I just counted to 10. A brand new perspective and awareness, and therefore ability to choose opens up when we're in that presence, when we're in that real expanse. I mean, presence is so expansive that it opens us up not only to seeing things differently, but therefore to being able to choose completely differently.
Hmm.
And my aperture being opened to new levels of presence and therefore new levels of choice, it feels like multiple lifetimes within one lifetime.
Yeah, multiple timelines,
Yeah.
some ways. Yeah.
Yeah, I
Mm,
can. It's like, oh, there's so much more that um I couldn't even perceive before. Now I can
yeah.
play in that playground.
Yeah. You know what's interesting though is you can perceive so much opportunity, we could say.
Mm,
Yet there is discernment to choose wisely and to
mm,
respond wisely and not to react and create some kind of negative timeline, you know, some kind of tamasic response or
mm.
reaction to the goings on. I find in this presence, living from presence is natural discernment. And it's nothing we have to do, nothing we have to think about. It's just going with the flow, man. And
Yeah, it's flow.
yeah, it's just flow. Another cliche, but it's real. And
It's
it's this
real.
higher wisdom, it's this higher intelligence, I like to say, that leads the way throughout all endeavors, especially in interactions with people, I've noticed.
Mm,
Like I know what to say or not to say, or who to hang out with or who not to hang out with. And many different ways and many different facets of my life, this higher self, we could say, leads the way, but it's real. And it's
mhm,
so effortless, man. It's so effortless in
mm.
how it guides you. There's no thinking, there's no rationale, there's no logic. Well, there might be, but that comes afterwards. That comes after the higher self's discernment and higher judgment that it will grant you.
Yeah.
It's true. I feel it. And once you feel that, it's like, whoa, it is superpowers. I think you mentioned that before. There is this essence of superpowers, and it's not really like levitation or reading minds. Maybe that comes along with it, some CDs, as people say, siddhis. But
Yes.
it's not, it's really simpler than that. It's a lot subtler than that. It's just all the goings on of our life. You just know what to do, essentially. But it's not like you doing it. That's the thing. It might sound like a contradiction in my words.
Yeah.
It's not me doing, it's almost like it's through surrender. It's letting your hands off the steering wheel and saying, Jesus,
Yes.
take the wheel. And
Yes.
yeah, and you go with that flow. Surrender. I like to say it's funny. We gain complete sovereignty through complete surrender. Sort of
Mm,
ironic in that way, right? It's like, what do you mean? Complete freedom through surrendering my will? It's like, yes,
mm,
exactly. That's how we find freedom, is you surrendered your will, your humanly egotistical will, to a greater divine will that works through you. And
mm.
one just becomes this instrument of divine love, instrument of God. You know, you become Krishna's flute. And
Ah, so good.
right, you just play the symphony. I think you mentioned this also in the beginning, harmonic, harmony. There is this essence of harmony, harmony and rhythm. And it is this dance. You go with the flow rather than against it. Swami Muktananda says, you can't stop the waves, but you can learn how to surf. And that's the
I
essence
love
of
that.
nice. Well, thanks, Swami Muktananda.
Yeah, yeah.
Right? That's the essence of spiritual awakening and integration is just learning how to surf, man. And the waves don't stop for sure. The waves keep
Oh,
crashing. There might be some really big waves. Actually, I know there's very big waves for all of us. So the only thing that we can do is learn how to become a pro surfer in that way. And
mm,
yes, you find play, you know. Learning how to surf is playful. It's
nice.
fun, you
Yeah,
know?
yes.
So, yeah, another quote I like to say, I say this often as well. Alan Watts said, "Man suffers because he takes serious what the
What's
gods made for play," or something along those lines, right?
so good.
It's all the same essence. The sages and saints are all saying the same thing that we're saying right now. It's taking the things of your life a little less seriously, the things you thought you should take seriously, and um, knowing how to resonate with play. You know, we're
Mm,
just children at a playground in some manner. So
yes.
yeah, yeah, wonderful stuff.
I
Wonderful
love
stuff.
this. I want to introduce too, and I do have it here, but
Mm-hmm.
this is my most recent book, Ecstatic
Ooh,
Playground.
wow, that's awesome. I actually wasn't aware of that. So there we go.
So here we go, channeling. Yeah, it is all about,
I
and I
like the
love that
cover.
you,
Did you come up with that
yeah,
cover?
yeah. So this
Ah,
cover is a vision that I got during a channeling session
it's beautiful.
that I was offering to someone. And I went into the void, and this is essentially ourselves
Hmm.
projecting ourselves,
Yep.
with the spectrum of light from the void. So
Seven
this is,
rays.
ooh, that's too weird. I have a necklace on that's got 777 on it,
Hmm.
and I had the seven is very strong right now. It's been coming through a lot in channeling, and I had a session just before jumping on this recording with you where seven came up very strongly as well. It's just, it literally knocks me over sometimes, like, oh, there it is again.
Why do you
Um,
think? What's coming to you now? Why seven?
mm, uh, I'm going to go into channeling. I have an understanding, but I'm going to tune in a little bit. The power of that number almost, it's like ecstatic, but it also makes me feel a little nauseous because it's so overwhelming. It's a gathering. It is the seven rays, but this is the prophecy that's been coming through for a long time. It's the gathering. It's the gathering of the seven nations. But there's more than that. What we've called the seven nations is more of a vibrational tone. There are also locations on the planet, seven highly activated locations on the planet that are streaming. They're open portals, and they're very strong open portals, streaming information back and forth from the planet, interplanetary, to all the guidance teams that are assisting with this Earth transformation process. But what I keep getting right in this moment is that this is a gathering, a culmination, a culmination. They're trying to show me something about the seven, the number seven and the 7 points. So I'm going to look at that. It has to do with the predominant layer of frequency that we're able to experience here on this planet. That when 7 points are connected, the matrix that it creates, the stabilization of light that it creates when all 7 points are activated, and when the frequency of seven is activated, um, it opens up that layer of our multidimensionality for us to collectively experience consciously.
Hmm.
Hmm. And sort of this reminder that this conversation has largely been about um, presence, but also that the nature of not being present is separation, that we've gone through our whole earth cycle experience of moving into separation, separation, more and more separation. There's this regathering that's happening, right? If we even look at like the image that came too is like Mesopotamia, where it was all one continent and then it became, multiple continents, and that energetically we are bringing things together again. It's really, really beautiful.
Yeah, gathering. Gathering is an interesting term to use.
Mm.
Yeah. Do you know about the seven rays in Theosophy and their explanation of it?
I have heard of the seven rays.
Hmm.
I haven't, you're kind of inspiring me to look at that
Yeah. It's
in
quite
in a
a
channeling
interesting
space.
philosophy. It's just about the seven different light rays and how they're different attributes and characteristics of who we are and who our
Mm,
soul is, like how we express. We all have different ratios of the seven rays,
hmm
essentially. Some of us have a little more blue, some of us have a little more red, some of us have a little more yellow, yada yada. But what that really means is our characteristics here, our like our behaviors and our patterns that we sow. It's all just through light and these colors of light through the one light. They sow the seeds of who you are, essentially.
Yeah.
And I like
Is
that
this
because all this is light, everything.
yes, yes.
Everything
Just
is
this
light.
prism. Yeah.
Yeah.
Does this, I'm sorry to interrupt. Does this have to do with like the integral spiral of
No, that's a
no?
different
That's a
model. You're
different
talking
model.
about,
Okay.
yeah, I know that one. That's it might have something to do with it that I'm not aware of, but as far as I'm aware of through theosophy, I don't think it relates. It might. I'll do some research after this. Maybe I'll put like a correction at the bottom. But no, the integral spiral is which is also interesting
It is
because it
interesting. I
also
have loved
revolves around
that
color.
model.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't know. That might have something to do with it. But as far as I'm aware, I don't think they really have much to relate. I mean, it all relates in one way or the other, so they probably do relate more than I know at this point, but they're two
Yeah.
different models. Yeah.
Mm,
Yeah. So when it comes down to it, though, really, it's like, how do I put this? There's only a certain amount of archetypes here, and there's only a certain amount of blueprints to the one blueprint of God. And
uh-huh.
it seems like it's been scattered over the millennia, like these different families, it's different soul families. We've all heard that. Like the different characteristics and behaviors have coalesced maybe in certain nations. The theosophy model and the seven rays actually does have that. Like in China, I don't know the exact color, but we'll just say, for instance, it's mostly red. It's
Yes.
mostly around the red characteristics and the attributes. When, say, in like Norway, they have a, I don't
Mm,
know, like I said, I don't know off the top of my head, but we'll say they're more blue or they're more purple. So they exhibit these certain behaviors based upon that.
so
And
interesting.
would you say?
So interesting.
Yeah. So I think what you're saying, like the idea of like Mesopotamia, or maybe it was a little more to the east. I like to
Yeah,
think it all started like above India, you know,
right.
like the Vedic civilization was there, but who knows, wherever it came from, it was
Right.
like the seven rays and these attributes were all within one region. We spread out through the millennia. And now, at this point, it seems like the attributes of light, the seven rays, are coalescing and forming this non-local and non-linear uh, connection. We're
Yeah.
reconnecting. And yeah, that's the point we're at right now. And it's thanks to the internet. Excuse me, let's be honest. It's thanks to the internet that we're able to find this connection. We wouldn't be able to do it without the internet. And I think that's what it's like. The internet is giving proof to us in a physical form, in a crude form, in a rudimentary form that we are all connected through light in that way, right? We're just like showing how we're connected, being
Mm,
able to do this. Like you probably come, I don't know, from a different soul family than I do. You have a different, like literal genes and a different upbringing. Your ancestors are probably somewhere different, but we're able to connect and bring together our seemingly different ideas into some kind of commonality, right?
mhm,
So I think that's the point we're at now is like bringing our differences into a similarity, like bringing our
mm,
seeming differences that we thought were that we war over in the past and still do actually, but bringing our differences in to see how much more we are in common than we thought. So yeah, that's
mhm.
the collective spiritual awakening I think we're talking about right now. There is a soul um spiritual awakening as in SOLE, your
Yes.
spiritual awakening, but also that rubs off into the collective and we're seeing that represented through things like podcasts as this, technology
Mhm.
in general, um and just the collective seeming to shift in a more, how do I put this? Like one community, one sangha. We're all like it's a little rocky, it's a little rocky, let's be honest. But we're getting there. We're making progress toward being one family, right?
Yes.
And this point of my story is all of the different attributes of light, the seven rays coming to find out the one light that we all relate to. So yeah, I
Absolutely.
get that. I feel that 100%. And yeah, do you think that's where this is all going? Let me ask you that, unless you have something else to say. Do you think we're all at this point gathering? Do you think this is a little rocky? We're got some growing pains going on, but do you think humanity at this point is living through times that we've probably never lived through, in the
Never.
essence that we're all coming together and finding out that, hey, we're all in this together?
Mm. It is absolutely, humanity has experienced a lot throughout all of the ages. But yeah, what I've been told is this is never happened before. This is unlike anything else we've experienced.
Yeah,
Um,
truly.
and yeah, it is a little bit rocky, but it can be viewed in many different ways. It can be viewed like we're a symphony tuning up our instruments so that we can play together in harmony so that it doesn't sound like, you know, right?
Yeah. Hmm.
And we are learning. And, the beautiful thing with that analogy is that there is actual attunement. So what we were talking about before with sitting with someone who is able to hold presence, you are more likely to be able to drop into that presence because we do attune to each other. And so when we can attune to our highest frequency and then we go out into the world, or we don't even need to go out into the world, but when we inevitably do, we're attuning each other to these frequencies. So that's, I think a lot of people view oneness as like losing our identity or losing our individuality. But it's actually a heightening of our individuality, but not from an ego place. It's a heightening of our individuality from a higher self place.
Hmm.
And so when each of us individually move into that higher self, the higher self version of ourselves is innately in harmony all, with all. And that attunement, what the 100th monkey or whatever, like as each of us attune, it pops everybody else into it too. It's just
Hmm.
an easy remembrance. Something that I've been told in a channeling space is that it takes a tremendous amount of effort for us to be human and to be separate at this level, to put ourselves into such a density layer that we forget who we are. It takes so much energy for us to be at that layer. And I think we often think the opposite, like, oh, I'm going to try and awaken, I'm going to try and ascend and put all this energy into it because I really want that. That's all we've got to do is let go of the rocks that we're holding because it is so much more natural for us to be in harmony than it is for us to be in separation. It's just
Yeah.
far easier.
Yep. Just gotta get out of our own way. That's
Yeah.
why I think this is an inevitability. All of us living on this
Yes.
wavelength, the kingdom of heaven, we could say, because we're doing it to ourselves. We're getting in
Yeah.
our own way. If we do just realize that this is natural, we are embodiments of love, which is just a matter of time, then it's going to reach a breaking point. Like the pressure, I feel like we're building so much pressure, as you said, like energy, right? It's just so much that we have to do to keep the show going. But
Yeah.
eventually that pressure is just going to blow. And I think it already has, to be honest with you. I think it's already blown, but which it may seem slow in terms of linear time and human time, but I think
It's
it's
pretty fast.
accelerating. Yeah.
It's pretty fast. It is. It's like one big build up to this cosmic orgasm, which
Yeah,
is,
exactly.
again, creation, right?
Yeah.
Um, One thing
Hmm.
that I want to mention is that, and a lot of people, this might feel uncomfortable for some people to hear, and you don't have to agree. But what I have seen over several years of channeling is that we enjoy this. Like this is fun. This experience of density, this experience of separation, it's fascinating. It's rare.
Hmm.
When we're in our eternal form, everything is and it's all there and we can create everything and we know and we're attuned to our truth of love frequency and being human and to be able to sustain some density layer of separation is it's and all of the experiences that come with that, like pain and hurting ourselves and hurting each other, that is a very unique experience. And there is, um, from our higher self perspective, we do find it fascinating and even enjoy it. And it is now at a time where, okay, we've had those experiences. Let's regather. It's just the divine turning of the gears. It's like, okay, we've done that. Now let's regather, bring all of that energy, all of those discoveries, all of that learning that we've had over, eons of separation and all of that. Let's bring it together.
Hmm.
And all of the frequencies and all of the different colors, right? All of the different bandwidths of colors. Like now we've experienced that in separation. How fascinating. How incredible. Okay, let's bring it together. Let's have it a yes and. It's a yes and
Yeah,
experience.
exactly. Yes, and that's quantum in a way. It's like not
Hmm.
zero, it's not one, it's both.
It's
It's the
both.
contraction, right? It's
It's
the
both.
contraction and the expansion. Yeah, as we spoke of in the beginning. Yeah.
Mm,
Yeah, that's why I feel as though we're entering a new state. It isn't really new, but
yeah.
it's new, at least in the human experience and expression. It's this new
Yes.
state of like, yeah, I'm separate, I'm Gary, I'm God, but so are you.
Yeah.
And we've never been really on that wavelength, as far as I know. Maybe in times
Yeah.
past, but that wavelength of separation and unity, that's the triad. That's the,
Yes.
that's the Father, Son, and the Holy Spirit. And
Hmm.
yeah, that's where we're going. It's taking the lessons of the illusion, the age of Pisces, and moving into this new age of Aquarius, where there is a renewed way of seeing and living. And it's not negating the separation, it's bringing in the sense of separation and dancing with each other. We don't
Mm.
only dance
Yes.
ourselves, right?
Yeah.
We find a dance and a groove in it, as we spoke of
Yeah.
before, but we learn to dance with
With
each
each
other.
other.
It's a group dance. What's more fun than dancing with yourself? You're dancing with the crew.
With
Everybody's dancing,
all the
right?
versions of God.
Yeah, exactly. See, that's where we're going. It's a
Mm.
harmony. I think we already said that.
Hmm.
Yeah. Synced up, a synchronization. And it's not in the way of like a hive mind. Somewhat is.
No,
It's
we
like,
don't lose ourselves.
yeah,
We don't
exactly.
lose
You don't
ourselves.
lose yourself to the hive. It's, you still have the sense of individuality, right?
Hmm.
The sense of I amness. But there's like other people that are in on the joke with you,
Yeah.
right? We're all laughing at the same joke.
Yes.
Yeah. And that's quite beautiful. And that's uncharted territory. And
Mm.
who knows? That's what's another miracle about this thing. It's like the show goes on and the show just gets more and more interesting. And you realize it's all perfect, right? You realize that
Mm.
even the darkness that one may be seeming living in, the ignorance that one may seem to be living in at this moment, it's all for a reason, it's all perfect. It may seem like crazy to say, but it really is like the darkness of the world. It's all perfect. It really
Mm.
is. And I don't want to sound like I'm spiritually bypassing here or like sound
No.
arrogant or privileged, but there is from this vantage point
Mm.
just a sense of, well, that's how it's supposed to be.
Yeah.
Who am I to judge?
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
know? But I think it's all eventually making way so we don't have to deal with darkness and separation, ideas of separation of like war and
Mm.
stuff of that nature. Eventually we'll get there, but we're already there in some sense.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's all
Hmm.
perfect, man. It really is. It really is all perfect. And yeah, hallelujah to that.
Hallelujah.
Right?
Mm.
It's real. It really is real. And I don't know. It's like you just have to feel it yourself.
Yeah.
There's only so much a podcast or a book can do for you.
Mm.
You just have to go within, practice that presence, find the love, and just play. And you learn to play, man. And
Yeah.
yeah, that's what I like to say with every podcast is just like, hey, this is just us just having some fun. Me and you, Allison, we're just having some fun,
Yeah.
reflecting each other at this point. But for
Mm.
anybody listening, if you want to know that this is real, what we're talking about here, you just got to go within. Don't take my word for it. Well, take my word for it, but my word isn't going to do it for you, right? We
Right.
can just be a testament. we can just like serve as a reminder and a remembrance. And yeah, that's why I do this is to
Mm,
remember. Like you brought me to this remembrance in this moment, so I
mm.
appreciate you. And
Oh,
yeah, help me remember that it's all perfect. And I appreciate that. Might be a good note to wrap this up at, to be honest with you, unless you have something
love
else
it.
to say on that note.
I love it. I love it.
Mm,
That's the perfect culmination of this conversation.
yeah. Well, I appreciate you coming on here and helping us all remember you are
Mm.
a beautiful person, warm
Mm.
soul, warm energy, and I wish you all the best. Keep doing your
Oh,
thing.
thank you, Gary. Thank you for the opportunity to have this conversation and to play with you and
That's it.
everyone else who's tuning in.
Yeah, it's all just play. I like to see this as a game, you know?
Yes.
Right? It really is a game. And
Hmm.
yeah, sometimes some games are a little bit more fun, but when I come on here with somebody else and they realize it's a game too, that's when it's a good
Yeah. Oh,
conversation.
yeah.
When someone takes it too seriously, they're like, "Oh, I'm being interviewed." Then I realize
Right.
they're creating this like barrier. It's like, "Come on." Sometimes I'm like,
Mm.
"Come on, bro, just
Yeah.
let it go. We're just having some fun here."
Y-
So that's it.
Yes.
I appreciate you coming on here
Mm.
and having some fun with me today. And I appreciate the listener as well. You're also in the game too,
Yeah.
in some kind of non-local, non-linear way. The listener that is listening right now, even though it's not right now. It actually is right now, but
Yeah.
it's not right now. They are also involved in this game.
Yes.
So in that way, it's a magical game. And I appreciate you, Allison, and I appreciate the listener for being here with me.
Mm.
Namaste.
Namaste. Sending love.
Peace and
Deep, deep
love. Goodbye,
love.
everybody.
Bye.